Hi, and welcome to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel with me, Tom Campbell. You can find me on Twitter at UtterlyTC. And in this week's video, I'm so excited to say we are going to be meeting another elite manager, and we're going to talk through their game week 1 team that they put together, saw how they did in the first game week, and then get right into looking at what they've got planned for the upcoming game week as we approach game week 2. Let's get right into it. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel with me, Tom Campbell. Now, I just want to say a big thank you to Corey for last week's video when we looked through Corey's team for game week 1. I'm sure you're all impressed by what he'd put together and his thoughts that underpinned that. And of course, Dan before that. But this week's video sees us talk to another elite manager. I'm super excited to say that we've got Craig joining us all the way from Denmark. And you can see there on the right-hand side of the screen that Craig is another awesome FPL manager. There are so many of these guys around. I'm definitely not one of them, so I'm learning with you guys. But Craig enjoyed a best ever finish of 80th in the top 100 guys back in the 2018-19 season. 4 5k finishes, I should say. 6 in the top 10k as well. So his record is absolutely incredible. Craig, welcome along. Thanks so much. And many congratulations on this awesome record. Do you think this season's going to be another success story?
Yes. Now I'm feeling really good this year. I don't know why, but I think it's because last year the wheels came off, so I'm quite determined that this year should be better.
Yeah, well, I mean, as we're going to see in a moment, Craig, we're going to take a look at your game week 1 team and talk to you about your game week 2 plans, and you can talk us through the thought processes for what you how you put that team together initially and what you're planning for to attack the next game week. But just before we do that, let's talk about this playing style. So you've mentioned that you like to plan 5 to 6 weeks ahead, but that you don't have to stick to that, but knowing who to buy and who to sell and when is key. Now, I get the sense that that might be down to living arrangements and certain younger children being around. Is that fair? Is that how that plan came to be?
It's completely fair. I mean, when I first started playing FPL, I don't think I really knew what I was doing, to be honest. And I used far too much time. Then along came kids. And as soon as you had the kids, then you have to start managing the 24 hours out of the day, and I needed to reduce how much time I was using on football and particularly FPL. And the way I came to making that happen was just by sitting down and making a plan at any one given time. Where are we looking for the next 5-6 weeks?
I see.
Where are the fixtures I want to attack? Who are the players I want to offload? And then making a plan A.
Mm-hmm.
And that plan A was based upon grass, to use the nom de guerre. It was based upon what data was available back then. It's obviously 100 times better now than it was back in the day. So that was my plan A, and I could always change it.
Yeah.
After watching Match of the Day or seeing a game live or whatever the influence was, but I reduced the time I spent on FPL by having a plan and planning things out. And it's not that I'm saying it's the right way of doing it. It's the way that I went about reducing the time I spent on FPL.
Yeah, no, I totally understand it. And I suspect for the viewers watching on YouTube, a lot of those folks will be in that same position. So, good advice there, I think, in terms of the practicalities of how you manage your team and, how far you can look ahead realistically. So the second point then is that expected value points going hand in hand with fixtures, and to be, realistic about who can haul and when. Do you want to elaborate on that? Is that kind of talking more about the budget type enabling players versus the the premium players and actually managing those expectations a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there are two things. Let's take the first one first with regard to value, or in terms of expected value. There are different ways of looking at it. I'm not pretending to have the right way of looking at it, but again, hand in hand with the time management, I've just making the decision that I look at the fixtures, and in my experience, fixtures more often than not breed good form and hauls. So, yeah, form has an element of things to do with it. Luck has a huge amount to do with it. But by and large, I will work upon the assumption when I'm planning that those hauls are going to come when when teams have good fixtures or are playing against teams who can be attacked. The second part you mentioned there is, and I can already guess who in my team you're thinking of, then there are some players most players don't score points every week, apart from appearance.
We wish they would, but they don't. You're right.
Yeah. And if you go into, especially game week 1 or the beginning of a season, but any game week with the idea that somebody who cost you £4.5 million is going to give you a busload of points, then you're asking for trouble or disappointment, and you're going to make bad decisions. So for me, it's just a question of, well, if somebody who costs 5.5 netto, or if somebody who costs 5 baby doesn't hit it in top bins in the first game, there's no point getting upset.
No.
If you want to get upset, spend 13 million on Salah and then get upset that he doesn't haul. But if you're going to cheap money on cheap players, then it's just part of the package. They're not always going to score. And part of the way I think about it is, well, if they don't, then they don't. And we go on to the next game week, and that's just how it is. So the point being, I don't get disappointed by bad scores from bad players.
Which is a good pragmatic way of going about managing your team, of course. So the last little point that you've got there, Craig, is that in relation to transfers. So, we get asked all the time on fantasyfootballfix.com as to when you should take transfer hits, and, people are using the various tools that we have available on the website in terms of, planning out transfers. And you've made the point that hits are worth it if they pay off over a number of weeks. So can you just expand on what you mean by that?
Yeah, very rarely I'll take a hit with a view to the coming game week.
Mm-hmm.
And that, again, it goes back to the 5-6 week plan. I'm always thinking, okay, who's coming in? How long are they staying in for? How desperately do I want to get rid of somebody? Be it because of injury, suspension, or them just playing completely shit. I mean, it's just those are the parameters you use for getting rid of somebody. So a hit for me, 4 points, it's not relevant over 1 week. It's relevant over how long do I think I'm going to keep that player in the team, and who are they replacing? So once you start looking at it over a 4, 5, 6 week period, then you compare the expected gain or the expected points haul of, let's say, 30 points compared to 21 for the player you're replacing, or less, however you do the mathematics, or whichever expected points algorithm you use, then for me, that's just not even close to being a discussion. That's just basic maths. That's the way I approach it, and it simplifies my process, and it reduces the amount of time I use on the game.
All great advice. And actually, I think trying to simplify the game and actually minimize the amount of time that we can realistically spend on it is part of the challenge. And, the tools on fantasyfootballfix.com do help with that, don't they, in terms of the fixture rotation planner and the difficulty rating and the various other tools that we have at our disposal. Ultimately, it's there to try and make this game easier, Look, Craig, let's get on and take a little look at this team. So obviously we are recording this after game week 1. So we are going to take a look at the game week 1 team. We're going to take a look at the points and how you've done. And then we're going to talk to you about what plans you've got upcoming for game week 2. So let's get right into that. So, Craig, we can see straight away that you opted for a 4-4-2 formation here, which I think was relatively typical for a lot of the managers, preparing for game week 1. We're going to come on and take a look at the bench in a moment, but let's start in goal then. So you opted for Aaron Ramsdale, picked up that nice clean sheet in the opener and the away match, against Crystal Palace. What was the thought process there? Was there a strong compulsion for the Arsenal defence, or is there a particular fondness to Aaron Ramsdale? What was your thought process there?
There's no fondness whatsoever for Aaron Ramsdale. That's not a... Let's just get that out of the way. There's a fondness for Arsenal's fixtures.
Mm-hmm.
And it was... I don't hugely rate him as a goalkeeper after his Jekyll and Hyde performance last season. But the defenders I wanted to fit in and the midfielders and the attackers precluded me from other players. So it was a case of, okay, Ramsdale is the best of what I consider, in all honesty, not a great bunch. There were some nice fixtures. Chelsea have some decent fixtures. I did consider the Chelsea keeper. The 4.5s, they weren't terribly sexy.
No. Were you at all interested, Craig, in the... I was going to say, sorry to cut across you there, Craig, but were you at all interested in this legendary 4.0 double up in the Leicester goalkeeper with Schmeichel leaving? Did that tempt you at all?
Yeah, it did for around 12 hours. And then I looked back at Leicester's defensive numbers last season and decided to not go for it, at least not go all in for it. So I had Ward as my second keeper, which
Yeah.
theoretically had the chance to go to Everson sometime along the line, but I didn't feel comfortable with going for a double Leicester right now, at least. So Ramsdale was the lesser of all the other evils.
Okay.
I
I
did
mean,
also consider.
yeah, I've opened up the bench there so that the viewers can see on your bench, and the people's eyes, I'm sure, will be drawn to Perisic there sitting as number one sub, which we'll move on to in a moment. So, having Ward there as your backup keeper makes, I think, good sense, doesn't it, with him seemingly taking that number one slot for Leicester, at least until the transfer window closes. If I just reveal the defence as well, Craig, I mean, straight away, because you've spent an enormous amount of money back there in terms of having Cancelo, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Reece James, and Andy Robertson, respectively. And you picked up some nice points with Cancelo and James. Obviously, Liverpool had that surprising, I guess, defeat away at Fulham. I guess my first question is, you spent an awful lot of money back there. Perisic on the bench, as we know. Presumably, you got news that he was going to be benched for the opener. Is spending big at the back for game week 1, Craig? Is that something that has helped you get those great ranks in the past, and that's something that you'd encourage managers to do?
Okay, first off, it isn't a huge amount of money at the back. I disagree with you completely. I think they're all bargains, and I think they're all no-brainers, to sound like somebody from The Wire. So that's the first thing. Secondly, the last few seasons with the emergence of Robertson and Trent, and especially James, I suppose, and Alonso going crazy a few years ago, and then Chilwell appearing.
Yeah.
There's so many attacking points coming from the back. The game has changed. The football game has changed, and FPL hasn't kept up.
No.
So for me, it's easy points to go after. And would I normally go for a 5 at the back? No, it depends on the fixtures. Yeah. It depends entirely upon the fixtures. But we have this anomaly this season whereby a lot of the fullback, a lot of the wing backs are priced, to my mind, extremely generously. To the extent they're giving them away, in my mind. Secondly, the fixtures have all fallen really nice.
Yeah.
A lot of the big teams, Liverpool, great fixtures right out of the box. City, great fixtures out of the box. Arsenal too. I could have gone Zinchenko. I did have him in one of the 10,000 cups.
Yeah.
Perisic, Spurs have got great fixtures apart from game week 2. Yeah. All the stars have really lined up for a 5 at the back for it to make sense, for you to make an argument for going 5 at the back. It has some huge inherent weaknesses, which I guess are what we're going to talk about when we start about.
We are, yeah, and I guess I should qualify. I mean, I totally actually do agree with you. It's still budget, isn't it? By saying spending huge, I mean what I mean by that is you'd be hard pushed to spend any more in the defence, but that's because they've simply not priced these amazing assets at prices that you'd pay for, further up the field, which is, like you say, the game sort of not keeping up with how football's changed. I think before we move on to the midfield, Craig, I just wonder, you got Andy Robertson there in your defence there. Was there a temptation? I'm going to reveal the midfield now, and the viewers will see that there's obviously no place for Luis Diaz, as you opted for Mo Salah to be that third Liverpool player. But was Luis Diaz in your thoughts prior to game week 1?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he was only maybe 1 week out. Do you know what? It was the Charity Shield.
The Charity Shield, yeah.
Where I pretty much took my decision to go for Robertson. But I mean, I know there's been lots of talk on Twitter and on the various forums about which was the right one. And for me, it's largely about team balance. I made a choice to go for big at the back and put the money in there. But these are both of them fantastic players. And on any given game week, one's going to outscore the other, but I mean, then the week after, it's completely turned on its head, and Diaz could have scored 2 goals. The weekend against Fulham, Robertson was incredibly high up the pitch. They're 2 great options. It isn't like we're picking Naby Keita or Andy Robertson. It's Diaz and Robertson. They're both fantastic. So I think it's a coin toss. It's one of those, choose the direction of travel and stick with it for some time.
Yeah, fair dues, and it's like it's backing up your points that when we were looking at the the manager notes from the previous section of the video, isn't it? And not having those kind of 1 week expectations of being too hard on yourself when they don't haul. So, I mean, the rest of the midfield there, we're just going to talk about that. So you captained Mo Salah. We'll talk about that in a moment. You've got Leon Bailey there, Neto at Wolves as well, and then Martinelli picking you up a nice 8-pointer there. So I think I'd just like to take Martinelli to start with. So the second Arsenal player that we've revealed so far, was there any temptation to be looking anywhere else in the Arsenal team? I know that we talked off camera about Saka as well, or was Martinelli just at that 2 million price point? Was it just a case of he just represented overall kind of more bang for the buck?
First of all, I did swear after last season I wouldn't go anywhere near Martinelli, so I have to hold my hand. I don't know, 180 that. But yeah, the fact that Smith Rowe was looking not fit, the fact that Martinelli seemed pretty nailed, the fact that Arsenal looked really, really good in pre-season with the additions they'd made to the team, and the fact that he was 2 million cheaper, that just made it too easy. But and it's just a natural consequence of if I'm putting 5 big hitters in the back, then something has to give, and you can't have big at the back and DS and Saka and the other 2 guys we're going to come to in a second, right? I mean, something. So you have to look for value, and Martinelli is, in my mind, by a country mile, the best value midfielder in the game, despite the scars on my back from last season. So.
Well, it's interesting, Craig, isn't it? I mean, the fact that we're just joking around here about last season, obviously some pain there from what Martinelli did or didn't do last season, but the fact that you can just, put that to one side and be like, actually, this guy's awesome value. I'm getting him back in for game week 1. Boom, 8 points off the bat. So, lovely pickup there. Look, in terms of the budget options there, obviously Leon Bailey and Neto played Perisic on the bench because you got wind that he wasn't gonna start there, and then I guess that's leads into a natural question there about having that nice first substitute as well. Is that normally something that you'd have, Craig, for game week 1, and actually having, a playing game sort of first sub that you'd be happy to rotate as part of a strategy? Is that typically what you'd advocate for?
Yeah, at least 2 of them. I mean, my third sub, I'm really, other than bench boosts, struggling to remember when I've ever played my third sub. No. Or my third sub has ever been needed to come in. I have no problem that being the worst fodder ever.
Yeah.
But for the 2, I mean, I feel pretty confident about Pereira in the sense that I think he's always going to be on the pitch.
Yep.
So fine, 2 points. I'll take that for a sub. I don't have huge expectations, A, for subs, and B, for people who cost 4.5 or 5. Yeah. And as for Neto and what's his name, Bailey, from Perisic dropped to the bench because of the rumours about Perisic not being playing in the first game. So otherwise, it would have been actually Bailey who started with Neto on the bench. So I only really intend to have one of those 2 playing for the first few weeks.
Yeah,
and then something will happen from there. I mean,
look, let's reveal these forwards so the guys can see that. I suspect they probably will have worked it out there. So you've gone for Gabriel Jesus along with most of the country. And you were in the camp of Erling Haaland as well, who picked up a lovely 13-point haul there away at West Ham. We're always good to help players out. I'm a West Ham fan, as the viewers will know. So I got to ask, was there ever a thought to opt for Harry Kane over Haaland, or were you locked into that pretty early on, Craig?
I'd always lent toward Haaland. But I was tempted by Kane. I think in the first few weeks of preseason, I didn't really pay much attention. But in my mind, I thought, as millions have done, I thought Kane, then moved to Haaland, and then Haaland, I thought looked fantastic in the Charity Shield. He got the minutes. The team looked like it was adjusting to a life with a good old-fashioned number 9, if you want to call it. So I went there. But I will say that it wasn't black and white.
Nope.
And had Salah, for example, not been playing Fulham, if Salah had been away at Chelsea or had a really difficult game the first game, I would probably have been swinging towards captaining Kane in game week 1 and then making a transfer. And then this conversation would have a very, very different tone to it. And
it would, you would be looking at far less chipper, yeah.
So in the end, it was relatively straightforward, but that was because of the Salah fixture. It was because of the captaincy. But I don't think it was one of those really obvious decisions. It was just one of those, not quite 50-50, but a decision which this week went the right way and another time would go a different way. So I'm not feeling particularly smug about it.
No, I think that's the right stance to take. It could have gone the other way, couldn't it? Harry Kane could have easily done equally as well against Southampton, and that would have been no surprise to anyone. So, I mean, we're looking at the team then in full, Craig. You've got a lovely start. Then you're in the top million comfortably for game week 1. In your experience, obviously, you've got all those great ranks that we showed on previous screens. How important would you say, maybe not even a good start, but a solid start is to sort of securing that overall rank come the end of the season? Is it critical, would you say, or is it actually not that big a deal? How do you stand on that?
I think it's critical to the mentality of the approach you have to the coming game weeks, because it's easy to panic when it goes wrong. Not when it goes wrong, when you're just unlucky. I mean, sometimes you can be getting a bad score because you were a complete moron and you picked some really bad players.
Don't I know it? Yeah.
And I've seen plenty of those on Twitter, right? Or in my friends league, or my work league, and the rest of it. So they exist, but I think the people who are watching this video are not those people. And you can be on the wrong side of luck for the first week or the first few weeks, and it defines, I find, at least it does for me, it defines the way I approach the coming weeks. I panic a bit. I want to chase. There's no reason to chase in the first week, because you got 37, 36 weeks to go, and that's what's going to define. I think this season is even more the case because it's such an anomaly. The World Cup, well, first of all, World Cup or no World Cup, the opening fixtures for the good teams are, as far as I can really think, I don't recall the good teams ever having better fixtures, all of them, at the start of the season, where the template among those who think FPL like we think FPL is relatively tight. It's not budget which constrains you from having 3 Man City players. It's the rule that you can't have more than 3 Man City players. And I don't recall any time we could do that with Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal, Spurs. It's not the budget holding us back. On top of that, so we've got prices, we've got the fixtures. Then we have the World Cup coming in from 16 onwards, and we have the wild card, which we have to use in between, which shortens the season into even shorter chunks. So I haven't quite got my head around how I'm going to approach it and what's going to come along. But the usual reasons to change the players in your team, or many of them, particularly fixture swings, there aren't any particularly huge fixture swings on the way, at least as far as I can, from the usual way I look at the game. There's nobody I'm desperate to jump off at any particular point in time. Maybe Arsenal from 9 onwards, but let's see.
Game week 9's a long way off, though, Craig, isn't it? I mean, it's sort of months away, isn't it?
I'm going to commit to right now. But having that wild card is so early, which everyone's going to be wanting to use, is I think, just sit tight. We don't know anything yet. Nothing. Yeah. The only thing we know is that Haaland looks like he's a player. And that's not the biggest surprise, right? So
no, it's good advice for the listeners. So the advice there is to be patient and not to be too fixated on that game week 1. I mean, in terms of game week 2 plans, Greg, let's change gear here and talk about that. So you've got Erling Haaland there, 13 points in the bag already from game week 1, playing Bournemouth, who admittedly looked, I think it's fair to say, hopefully you would agree, more solid than I was expecting them to be in game week 1. Is he a lock for your captaincy in game week 2?
Yes.
Yeah. No temptation there for Salah in that home game against Crystal Palace. You think it's Haaland all the way?
I think Crystal Palace, apart from set pieces, Crystal Palace are a really, really great defence. I don't. Famous last words, and we can all chuckle at my expense in 5 days' time. But I don't see Liverpool knocking Palace for 5. Okay, everyone bookmark that. But I don't see it happening. But City looks scary. And Haaland looks scary to me. So that's as we also talked about off camera, it was a wee bit boring last season with the perma-captain being on Salah. And I'm already getting the odour of perma-captain for Haaland already after watching highlights of their game. But no, I'm going Haaland. And I always was going Haaland because of the fixture, and after watching the highlights against West Ham, sorry man, it's hard for me.
Don't worry, mate. I've seen West Ham get their pasted more times than you know over the last X number of years. So all good, all good. So that's set captaincy in terms of the upcoming fixtures. Obviously, you've had Perisic on the bench for game week 1. Tougher fixture for game week 2 in the Chelsea game as well. How do you see yourself setting up, Craig? Are you going to stick with the 4-4-2? Are you going to bring Perisic into the team? Have you decided yet? What's your thought there?
I think I'm going to leave him on the bench.
Okay, interesting.
And the reason I'm going to leave him on the bench is there's obviously the issue about minutes.
Yeah.
And I suspect we're not going to find out from Conte before whether that's the case. But a game against Chelsea, I thought their defence looked. Maybe they weren't playing as much, but I thought that the new signings looked great. I thought Cucurella looked great when he came on. I thought Kubai was fantastic. Mm-hmm. Thiago was just back to being fantastic again. There's a question about. I mean, I'm not the big football tactics guy, and I'll try to listen to a few pods before the deadline. But my interest is okay with the Spurs fullbacks pushing up so far against a Chelsea team who have fullbacks pushing up so far. Is there going to be space? Perisic to get in behind, but I'm thinking this is one game where I could comfortably leave him on the bench.
Yeah.
And I have Neto playing at home, and I have Bailey playing at home.
Understandable.
And Pereira could always come in. I'm not expecting a huge amount from them. Let's just put it mildly, but I wouldn't be expecting a huge amount for Perisic against Chelsea either. So that's one fixture where I might just leave him on the bench, but. Thereafter, then he's a lock in my team from there on. I love the guy, big expectations, and maybe
you and a lot of managers, I think, will have that similar view. So I guess we can infer from your answer there, Craig, that you're looking for, pending obviously injury news and press conferences and what have you. This is being recorded early in the week. That you're looking to hold a transfer and bank that so that you'll go into game week 3 with 2 free transfers in the pocket. Is that sort of a standard tactical approach that you would encourage managers to do as well in terms of building up those 2 transfers and then retaining them where you can?
I mean, listen, there are loads out there who've gone for, as I also considered going from Kane to Haaland, and that free transfer has gone. So that's not available for them. But if unquestionably, if you can keep the transfer and go into game week 3 and be able to attack a little bit, maybe take a hit. I've got nothing. I mean, we've already covered the way I think about hits. If I'm looking at from game week 3 to game week 8, and Diaz, for example, you haven't got Diaz, and he goes crazy this week, or the one who really worries me is Darwin.
Yeah.
I've got a 5 at the back with Robertson being there, and the one who really worries me is Darwin. And how the hell I get him in the team because he's non-penalty XG against Fulham was just ridiculously high, and he was only on the pitch for like half an hour. So that was really mean when I saw the stats. So if it looks similar in the next game, then game week 3, I'd really like to have those 2 free transfers and have the theoretical possibility of bringing him in by doing a bit of
jiggery pokery. Yeah. And it is at that point when I'm sure you'd use the multitude of tools over on fantasyfootballfix.com to help you. I'm sure. Cheap plug. Look, so I think that makes sense to me. You've made a really solid start there, Craig. Happy with the team. Looking to roll that transfer going into game week 2, pending news there. Just a final question before we close out. Then, so Steven Gerrard didn't sound massively impressed with the creativity of his Villa team there in the Bournemouth game, understandably so, having not scored against them. Leon Bailey had a great pre-season. He signed from Bundesliga where he had great stats as well, and impressed when he was fit last season. Let's say, for argument's sake, he doesn't return in game week 2. Craig, is he on the chopping block immediately at that point for you? He's a candidate to be first out of the door, but I'm not hugely. I mean, Pereira's there, bringing in 2 points a week and taking corners and the occasional free kick for them, and looking. They look good against Liverpool. So I have no problem with him coming off. I'm 100 times more focused on how do I get Darwin or or a Mount or a whoever it is, or a Kula or somebody else into my team
rather than waste time thinking about Bailey. Bailey's there. He cost me 5 million. My expectations are pretty low. If he doesn't perform, then what did I want for 5 million quid?
Yeah.
So, as it turns out, I suspect that come game week 3, if it's as bad, I mean, my reasons for getting rid of Bailey would be as much to do about Villa and Gerrard as they are to do. I mean, he was there because he was 5 million. There wasn't really a great deal to choose from at that price point. I don't like Gerrard's Villa tactically. I don't particularly care for the things that Gerrard's been saying the last 24 hours and giving Tyrone Mings a bit of a hard time. It doesn't like a happy camp. And happy camps put me off. I wouldn't touch United right now because I think that Ronaldo was.
It's funny, Craig, of all the elite managers that I've interviewed so far, you're the third one, and the lack of Man United talk is absolutely telling. You know, they just haven't featured, and totally understandably, the club's completely toxic, in my opinion, and even though they had some attractive prices, no one was interested at all. And look, your point about Leon Bailey then as well, just rooted right back to the beginning of our chat, actually. You were sort of saying those lower price options, you know, don't get too fixated and expect them to return points every week. They are that price for a reason, you know.
Exactly. But to be clear, my aversion to United isn't. I mean, I think they have some great players at some great prices, and I'm sure that Ten Hag will fix it sooner rather than later. My problem is that until they resolve the Ronaldo issue, both off the field but particularly off the field, then that's not going to be a happy club. And I tend to try and avoid happy clubs. Unhappy clubs.
Unhappy clubs.
So, yeah, that's my reason there.
Yeah. Look, I think that's fascinating stuff, guys, as well. So that would be a sort of advice on a more macro scale to take a look at the sort of morale of a team. And you mentioned Fulham a few times in this video, like an impressive start. Andreas Pereira sitting there at 4.5 million. There might be some options there, guys, to take a look at as you're planning your game week 2 side. Anyway, look, I mean, we're going to wrap things up now, Craig. I just want to thank you ever so much for coming on the video. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover that I've not asked you about? Any final thoughts before we close out?
Nothing that immediately springs to mind that I should mention on this channel. So I think that's all.
All right, mate. Well, look, I'm so excited to be talking to you again throughout the course of the season. We're going to track how you're getting on. I'm sure another great overall rank beckons with the way that you plan and think things through. So, guys, I just want to say we are going to continue this series week on week, talking to the elite managers who you can go over to fantasyfootballfix.com. Take a look at the elite manager section. You can see how all of them are planning their transfers and see how they are progressing, along with a whole host of other tools that we've got available. So I do encourage you to please head over to fantasyfootballfix.com and subscribe. Do also subscribe to the channel as well, guys. And do please smash a like on the video for Craig and for this series as well on your way out. Thank you so very much for watching, and I look forward to talking to you all next week. Have a great game week too. See you next week. Bye-bye.